Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. We called today's press briefing, which is normally on Wednesday, because we have just received 2 documents that we've been waiting for regarding the Port of Anchorage construction project. The first document is the forensic audit that we ordered to determine whether or not the various designs that have been proposed and been utilized at the port are appropriate. And one of the things that we had, of course, was the Corps of Engineers contracted with CH2M Hill to look at the P&D design and determine whether or not it was suitable for the construction project. CH2M Hill, as you're aware, concluded that the design was not adequate due to global stability issues. And so we found ourselves in a case of 2 different engineering firms with 2 different opinions, so we felt it was important to get a third-party opinion. And we engaged the firm of Simpson, Gumpertz, and Heger, and their report has concluded that the CH2M Hill study was indeed accurate, that the P&D design does not meet the global stability requirements. They state that among other design parameters, for example, one of the things that was mentioned was that the P&D design used different values than the CH2M Hill design, and what the SGH firm has concluded is that regardless of the values used, it still does not meet the global stability requirements for the port. So this helps us, I think, move forward with what sort of design we're going to use for the port as we advance the project here in the next few years. And so we're glad that that work is done. The other document that we received is the Department of Transportation Inspector General's report on MARAD's handling of the project as the project manager. And what they concluded was that MARAD did not establish effective oversight mechanisms when it initiated its port responsibilities. They did not define port project oversight responsibilities or provide guidance to contractors for developing program management plans. They did not establish a sound risk management process consistent with industry best practices. And they did not have a process to systematically store, maintain, and track project progress and project funds. They also concluded that they did not effectively manage the port contracts themselves, and they found that the project had significant contracting problems stemming from MARAD's inadequate planning, lack of reliable cost estimates, and noncompliance with federal contracting requirements. So this, again, helps us with some clarity moving forward. We have taken the position that we will be managing the project in the future, and that MARAD's handling of the project in the past was inadequate, both in not establishing good oversight procedures and not managing the contracts and the construction. So again, this is an independent report from the Inspector General, and again, it verifies, I think, that the position we have taken is the right position. I'll stop there and talk about, answer any questions. We also have one more announcement to make, which you may have seen yesterday, but we'll stick to the port for a little bit first.
Mayor Sullivan?
Yes.
I appreciate your time today. The IG report identifies management problems within MARAD, but MARAD points to the port as giving it the cost estimates. Were there deficiencies with the way the port handled its project? I understand much of this was before you came on, but you've had a lot of time to look this over, and I guess I'm looking at who's to blame for those bad cost estimates and management problems. Yeah,
when you take on the responsibility as the project manager, you take on the responsibility to make sure that cost estimates are adequate. So if the port put forth some numbers in the very, very beginning of the project, it then became MARAD's responsibility to make sure that those numbers were accurate and to make sure that the contracts that followed, were adequately funded. So I think the IG report makes it very clear that that falls in the lap of the contract manager, which was MARAD.
But then who underestimated the port costs? That's referred to several times in the IG report. Yeah. MARAD says it got those costs from the port.
Sure, but as the project manager, it's then their responsibility to verify those costs. That's their job. Before you start letting contracts for work, you want to make sure you know exactly what the scope of the work is and what the estimated cost is going to be. So there might have been some preliminary numbers from the port, but it's the project manager's job to verify those numbers and to make sure it can be constructed under those numbers.
So is it your position then that the port is blameless in this problem here?
I think the IG's report makes it very, very clear that MARAD had the responsibility for all the contracting, all the construction, and that includes the price It includes the oversight. It includes all the different parameters I mentioned just a moment ago.
Mayor, from this point on, the municipality is going to manage the expansion project over there?
Yes, in fact, our next step forward is we're developing a request for proposals to hire a project management team from the private sector. Clearly, we will be directing the work of that project management team and be deeply involved in every aspect of it going forward, which clearly didn't happen, during the previous construction phases.
How much is that going to cost?
Well, typically, it's going to depend on the overall cost of the project. You're looking typically at a 10 or 11% charge for a professional management firm of a construction project of this nature. So it'll depend on what the final number is on the construction project, which, again, part of the role of that team and our team will be to develop that new cost, depending on what design we choose going forward.
Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay to finish the port project?
Well, we're still looking at a variety of sources. We certainly will be working with the state of Alaska, which last year, as we know, not only funded a direct grant of approximately $50 million, but also on the statewide bond, approximately another $50 million. So the state has been consistent in their support of the project. We don't think there'll probably be as much federal money going forward as we've seen in the past. But we are going to continue to work with the Department of Transportation, with the Department of Defense, and any available grants out there that we can secure. We're certainly going to be very aggressive in trying to secure them. We are a strategic port designated by the Department of Defense, so we'd like to think that they would continue to hopefully provide some support for a strategic port.
Are we going to have to pay to undo the work that has been done? The forensic engineering study says that the cell work that's been done is inadequate. Does that mean all that has to be now ripped out completely?
Not all of it. There will have to be some of the work that's been completed so far that will have to be undone.
Did your administration, I know you started sort of in the middle of this project or sort of at the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any opportunity you guys had to sort of fix or fight some of the problems with MARAD's management identified in the audit? And
Sure.
If so, what have you guys sort of done there?
Well, we literally started fixing it from day one. When we came on board, it was reported to us literally within weeks of taking office that there were construction problems at the port. By the next season, we were able, through underwater diving inspection, to determine that, yes, that was correct. There were sheet piles that were clearly damaged. There was land that was slipping underneath the sheet piles. And so we stopped work. And so at that stage, there really was no role for MARAD. There was no construction moving forward from that point. So in the meantime, we've worked with MARAD trying to develop a new memorandum of agreement, and it's going to be very clear in that memorandum that we will be managing the project going forward.
Sir, in the IG report, MARAD in their response says that they are currently trying to divest themselves completely from the project. Is that not accurate?
Well, I think if we do get federal funding, it has to pass through some federal agency. So right now, through the congressional law that authorized them in the first place, they still are the agency of record. So if there is any federal funding coming forward, they probably would be the ones who administer those funds, but they would not be involved in the construction management or oversight.
Is that likely in light of the mismanagement by MARAD of the previous attempt to fix that project?
Oh, I don't want to speak for how the federal government might want to manage MARAD in the future.
No, I meant as far as funding. There's been several $100 million spent.
Mm-hmm.
Much of that work has to be undone. The project is still not finished.
Sure. Well, I think future funding is going to depend on confidence in the team that's managing the project going forward, and I think we're going to establish that they will have great confidence in both our team here at the municipality and whatever professional firm we hire as the project managers. We're going to work diligently to make sure that we hire folks with very appropriate experience in projects of this nature, which again was one of the problems with the project in the past.
Is there a timeline on the RFPs for that? Is it just wherever you get feedback from?
We've been working on the RFP now for a number of months. It's in draft form right now. We'll be making refinements to it. We may be able to have it on the street within the next 60 days or so.
Also, is there any is it possible the municipality could take legal action just based on the setbacks with the port? mismanagement?
Sure. Well, anything's possible, but it's probably not appropriate to discuss litigation or potential litigation in a forum like this.
Well, because there is a case, the city has pursued some.
Yes.
So, and does that, do either of these audits affect that at all, and how?
Well, I think certainly the Inspector General's report is very informative in terms of the lack of oversight and the lack of contract management by MARAD, and so that's certainly valuable information.
Is MARAD one of the defendants in the
No.
suit? So does that mean that they could be potentially liable?
Again, it's not appropriate to discuss potential litigation in a forum like this.
Mayor Sullivan, how much, I know we're dealing with a diversity of funds from federal, state, and city agencies. How much has this project actually cost the city? How many millions of dollars in city funds?
Oh, well, not so much in city funds. It's mostly been state and federal funds, but there has been municipal contribution. Probably Todd or somebody knows off the top of your head, but it's like 30 or 40 million, or Rich, I'm sorry.
That's probably
Yeah.
about 30,
Yeah.
And that's all on the port website.
Yeah, very good point. You can actually go to portofalaska.com/expansion project, and the various funding sources are delineated there. But about most of the money's come from state and federal. It's been about an even split of maybe $150 million each or so, and then another $30 million approximately from the port funds.
Mayor Sullivan, do you believe the former port director who was in charge of this project, former Governor Bill Sheffield, acted appropriately in his management of that project?
Mr. Sheffield was not managing the project. MARAD was managing the project, as the IG report makes very clear.
Well, clearly they weren't, according to the IG, and they had ceded management of the project to the Port of Anchorage, which was directed by then former Governor Bill Sheffield.
Yeah, but keep in mind I believe that's a bit of a misstatement in the sense that it was MARAD who was responsible for the contracts and the management of those contracts, and just because they did an inadequate job of that doesn't mean that the blame falls to the port director.
But he made, with all due respect, sir, he made the decisions that have now been called into question by the IG. MARAD's oversight or lack of oversight of those decisions has also been called into question.
Well, bottom line is there's a responsible agency. That agency did not do their job very well, and that's the bottom line. That's what the IG report makes very clear, is the responsible agency did not adequately perform.
Just to go on that figure of 30 to 40 million in municipal funds, sir. Of course, when state and federal funding gets involved, it's hard for a city entity to keep track of all that. But could you talk about what, if any, kind of oversight the city had on how its own money was spent on this project? How that 30 to 40 million was spent? How you guys track that?
Yeah, I mean, our contribution to the project went into the overall funding, and at that point, the contract manager is responsible for tracking the funds, and that's one of the things the IG report points out as well, is that there was inadequate tracking of funds by MARAD, whether it was state, federal, or municipal.
And does the state have any kind of watchdog of its own to let the state know, or I should say the city, to let the city know that this funds that we've turned over to MARAD aren't being managed responsibly?
Hard question for me to answer. That'd be a great question for the Department of Transportation. But again, I think bottom line is a variety of funds came into one place. Those funds were administered by MARAD, and they, quite frankly, did not do a great job of tracking how the funds were spent, or even being able to report to the IG, the Inspector General, of how the money was actually distributed, and their record keeping was not the best.
Correct me if I'm wrong, there's a section in the IG audit that talks about how MARAD seems to have thought at some point that the port and the city that they had to some degree ceded technical oversight and some of the oversight to the city and the port. What's sort of the city's your was that sort of referring to your administration, to prior administrations, and is that a point that you contest or?
Well, again, I wasn't here when the time frame that they're referring to was previous to us. I think I explained what our role has been. We discovered the problem right away, took immediate steps to analyze what the extent of the problem was, and now have established a path forward to fix the problem. So as far as what happened in the previous administration, it'd be a great question for the previous administration. Anything else? We have one more announcement. You may have seen a press release yesterday, but in case you didn't, we're very, very pleased to announce that the Alaska Humanities Forum, which is working with us on the Anchorage Centennial Project, has received a $500,000 grant from the Rasmussen Foundation over a 2-year period to help support centennial projects, which, of course, commemorate in 2015 the 100th anniversary of Anchorage. So we're very, very pleased by that. It allows us to work with the Humanities Forum and help fund the various community projects, and there's literally hundreds of them coming forward. So very great announcement. Very, very thankful to the Rasmussen Foundation for their continued support of projects in Anchorage and across the state. So very happy about that. With that, if there's no other questions, thank you all.